Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Flawless Talk. This time we are joined by Michael Vandahl. Michael is a former college basketball player, basketball coach, and the founder of Westlife, which is a sustainable clothing company that we're going to dive into a little bit today. I just want to say thanks for joining us here, Michael.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Definitely. Michael, here at Flawless, we always get things started by asking our guests how they're really doing. So this is a little bit different from, your day-to-day life when someone says, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And you just reply, "I'm fine." We actually want to know a little bit about, how you're actually doing right now. So how are you doing today, Michael?
I'm feeling pretty good. Just did some yoga and, be honest, like I had a pretty long winter, long basketball season. We had a big winter here in Steamboat where the sun didn't come out very much. Kind of going through, I think, a lot of growth personally, kind of just with learning about myself and, personal situations. And I think I feel like I've kind of had past couple of weeks had a little bit of some breakthroughs. So I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty optimistic. But as we all know, growth isn't easy. You got to go through the muck first. So I definitely feel like the past 6 months I've kind of been going through the muck, but I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate that honesty, man. Thank you for that.
Of
And
course.
this conversation right now would not be possible without you having a run-in with our founder, Janine. You guys met each other at an airport, I think she was saying. So you want to just, tell us how this all got started, how you guys got connected?
Yeah, it was actually at the Westlife store. It's pretty slow right now. So, I'm only getting a few mud season in Steamboat and only getting a few customers in a day. And I think you probably know more than most. She seems like a bright light, very friendly and talkative. So we just got to talking and it came about that, I coached a high school basketball team here and, just the conversation about being a former athlete. And then she was talking about what she does with the Flawless Foundation. And I actually coached her, her nephew, Quinn, my first couple years back in, 2016. So, yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, so you guys are super connected.
Yeah.
And another connection you guys share is Steamboat Springs, as you mentioned. It's where you're from, and that's where she kind of grew up and has family there. So I've heard through Janine that it's a very small town where people are, pretty intensely driven about athletics. So, athlete to athlete, what was it like growing up in such an environment like that?
Yeah. Steamboat is, I think there's like 12,000 ish people in the town. And I think it attracts, um, athletes, and not just like kind of basketball or football, but like people that just really like to take care of their bodies and that kind of stuff and adventure. And, um, it was great growing up here. I don't think anybody appreciates it until you leave. When I went to play basketball in Nebraska, I really started to appreciate it a little bit more. There's just tons of opportunity to ski, snowboard. Then you've got basketball, all that stuff. There's a big ranching community, so there's all that kind of, the horse stuff and being a cowboy or cowgirl if that's what you want. But I think it's also a community that's like really there's a lot of go-getters and it can be an intimidating community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of very successful people here. And, and if you feel like you're not being successful, it can be kind of intimidating. So
Yeah, definitely. And it's cool you mentioned skiing and snowboarding, and 'cause I think of West, I think the great outdoors. But with that being said, your sport was basketball, on the court. So from what I learned about your athletic past, you used to play basketball at the University of Denver, then you moved on to the University of Nebraska Kearney. But you ended up finishing your career at Western State Colorado University. So your journey was a bit, different than the traditional path. Do you mind just walking us through your experiences and what you took away from it?
yeah, I had a really good Hall of Fame high school coach named Kelly Meek at the high school. So I was very blessed to have a really good mentor and just a really good basketball mind and a coach through high school. We were really successful. Like I said, he's had 500 wins. And then I think I was offered to go to Western State and a couple other of the Division II schools around in Colorado. But I just really, at that point, growing up in a mountain town, I think I wanted to get out, didn't want to go back to a mountain town. And I also really wanted to give Division One was kind of always my dream. So I just had to give that a shot. And I'm really happy I did. The year I spent at DU was very, eye opening, and got to play against great competition every single day. The school was great, met some great people, but I don't think it was going to work out if I really wanted to play a bunch. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. So turned the page and tried Nebraska Kearney. And, that was a great experience. I met a lot of great people. The coaching staff was kind of going through some changes at the time. And, there's quite a bit of turnover, not just with myself, but a lot of people before I'd come, after I left, where there's a lot of transfers. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. It wasn't, I stuck it out for 2 years, but just kind of after the end of 2 years, I think I really realized that, Nebraska is great, but it's not for me, the lifestyle and stuff. And my high school coach ended up being the assistant coach for his son-in-law, who was the head coach at Western State. And so I kind of came full circle, came back. I had to redshirt for a year, but that allowed me to get 2 degrees, which was awesome. And I think I enjoyed my redshirt year more than any other year. Just got to work out and get better, but also had no pressure of games. And then, finished out at Western. And by that point, I kind of realized I really liked the mountains and the outdoor lifestyle, and met a lot of great people there too. And, like you said, it was 3 different schools, was unorthodox, but I got to see 3 different college systems, got to meet, 3 different kind of groups of people. And I think it really kind of expanded my, playing career, and I'm pretty thankful for it.
Yeah, not only that, I think that's a great segue into kind of not only the next question, but the next moment of your athletic career. You went into coaching. So I can imagine kind of moving around, like you said, the different experiences, the different coaching systems, the different coaching philosophies, all that probably, contributed and built you up into the coach you ended up becoming. So, what was it like to become that mentoring figure? And, when you're kind of coaching your athletes, what are some of the key principles, whether on or off the court, that you really wanted to instill into them?
It's funny. Coach Meek told me he's been a big mentor of mine, and kind of when I started coaching, he told me, you need to be yourself, and you need to kind of coach, you need to find your own voice. And I think if I could go back and change some things that I did early in my career that I maybe regret, is I think I tried to coach how I was coached in college, with a lot of force and strict and kind of, no nonsense, all that kind of stuff. And I was hard on the guys, and, I always cared about them, but, and maybe I had to go through that, and I had to kind of learn, there's no greater, there's no greater teacher than experience. And then kind of early years, we were successful, but, I definitely think I made some mistakes. But now kind of feel like I've kind of found my voice. I've found with yoga and stuff like that, I've kind of become more comfortable with who I am, and become way more vulnerable with myself and the boys that I coach and mentor. And I think one of the biggest things I've realized is the more vulnerable you are and the more comfortable you are with yourself as like a man, you can connect with your players that much more. So honestly, vulnerability is like kind of a big theme for me. I struggle with that as a player, kind of coming through. And for me, that's kind of been my big coming of age as a coach, I would say, is that vulnerability piece. And if that's like the big word, outside of any X's and O's or any standard, any core value that we have, if I could think of one word that's kind of helped me grow as a coach, is vulnerability.
Yeah, I mean, we're a mental health foundation, and that's something we preach is vulnerability, being open. So I'm glad you kind of found a sense of that in your coaching career. Something else that we're really big on that we push is, inclusion and inclusivity. And being an athlete, I've seen the way that sports can, help. It just brings people together. And you've already mentioned you've went to different universities and you've met different people, and that's everything that I believe sports is about, is just connecting different worlds and bridging into one. So I don't know, was there anything that you intentionally did as a coach to foster a more inclusive environment? And, also too, what are some just examples of inclusivity of people coming together that you might have experienced as a coach or a player?
As a player, I thought it was really, really cool to, at each different school I went to, you get to meet different people from all different backgrounds, from different countries. Like at Western State, I remember we had guys from Brooklyn, Connecticut, San Diego, Louisiana, Texas, Denmark, Australia. That was just super cool. An experience that I don't think you get when you just go to a normal college. And maybe you do if you join clubs and stuff, but it's really it's just a really cool opportunity. And what I think athletics does is it just kind of levels the playing field with everybody, no matter what money you come from, where you come, whatever you were blessed with, but before you got there, like you're just kind of all level and you're all going through the same growth and the pain of workouts, and you're trying to achieve something. And I think it's a really cool experience. And I hope that people can find that in some form or fashion. I think it really benefited me and my outlook on the world, my worldview. So, and then coaching, it's always been my goal from when I started, is to have a program that can, if you like basketball and, you have a good attitude about it, no matter if you get playing time or not, they will try to kind of keep you along. So we've had a lot of those players where they might not get a lot of time even as a senior, but they stick with it. And, we try to get them in. And I think that's really, really important, especially for those like star players, to kind of say, hey, no, we're not bigger than anybody else. We're all equal in a sense. And, this last year was really cool. This previous season, we had a kid with autism that kind of joined the team, and he was a manager for most of the season, and our players were, I get emotional about it. They were super good with him the entire season, and they included him in everything. And watching him grow and being like, before the season started, he would barely talk to me or really anyone. It was hard for him to get stuff out. And then by the end of the season, he's talking to the boys, he's, dancing and doing tons of fun stuff. And I think at the end we got him in it for a game, and it was really special. He scored a basket and the crowd went wild and all that stuff. So, that was and we had a successful season. We won league and made it to Sweet 16 for the third straight year, but none of that compares to kind of like those moments. Those are the special ones.
Yeah, that right there is amazing. That's what sports is about, and as impactful of a life memory as that was for that player with autism, it's equally impactful for those around them who are learning how to adjust and how to handle that. So that's amazing. That's kind of something that you guys were able to experience. But yeah, man, you seem like you've done it all. You've done basketball, you coached, you played. We haven't even dove into Westlife and what you're doing there yet. Before we get there, you did mention already that you've done a little bit of yoga, and you've gone through a yoga teaching program. So we always preach yoga, the physical benefits, the mental and emotional benefits. So what kind of got you into yoga?
After my playing career, I think one of the biggest things I struggled with was kind of finding a new identity, or being okay with like who I was after, the ball went flat. And I think I was really searching for the past couple years, and probably not in the best ways, kind of went down a little bit of the partying avenue, tried to, find an identity there, and just really wasn't satisfied with anything. And, it actually ended up being a lady, her name's Tiffany. I did some one-on-one sessions with her. And for me, being that stoic athlete, I think I was still too embarrassed to like go into a yoga studio, and she made it accessible to me, kind of like just to be myself in there. And I just remember feeling after the first like 5 to 10 sessions, every time I left, I just felt so clear headed. I felt so light, all the issues that I thought were really big and, weighing on me didn't seem so huge anymore. And, so yeah, that kind of started it. And then I started going to a studio called Out Here Yoga in Steamboat, and they do these 40-day challenges. And I did about 6 or 7 of those where you do, yoga for 6 days a week, and you do a lot of personal work. And I'm so thankful that I found yoga because I've always been attracted to the exercise part of it. That's always made me feel complete or calm. But there's nothing compares to yoga in terms of like kind of coming back to your true self, calming your mind, connecting your body to your mind. Really that truly healthy way to be at peace, so to speak. And yeah, so now then I did a teacher training, and I think the West life that I just started, we'll talk about, and kind of the coaching, my growth as a coach, all that stuff, me kind of becoming more comfortable with vulnerabilities, all because of yoga. And anytime I think about success in my life, it kind of always circles back to getting to my mat every day, and just super thankful.
Yeah, that is a heavy endorsement for anyone, but particularly for any athletes that might be watching this, because that athletic identity and having to, once that's over, and for those of us that don't go pro, having to figure out, wait, so what is my passion if it's not playing and pursuing and chasing a dream? Like, who am I? Like, who am I supposed to be? I'm not, Michael, the basketball player, Trey, the football player, like, so that's something that I definitely want to emphasize is very important. And it's cool to hear your path and kind of what helped you clear things up was yoga. So that endorsement is definitely heavy. And as you mentioned, diving into Westlife, which you are the founder of. So another one of your versatile skill sets. What motivated you to begin this company, and then why is sustainability such an important thing for you?
So I majored in business and environmental studies at Western. And when I first came out of college, I got into the coach. I was running the youth programs here and kind of got into coaching. And I was kind of wondering, when am I going to use business and environmental studies? And I've always kind of had a knack for art, but I just didn't pursue it, or had the time, I guess, to pursue it. And so, yeah. And then the environment's super important to me. On top of yoga, getting out and, backpacking or getting into wild places and exercising out in those places is like super important to me. It's, very intrinsic, it has a very intrinsic value. I think as a society, we're starting to realize the importance of it. And so those are just like those three things, like the wild and that outdoor adventure and lifestyle, the artistic stuff, and then sustainability. Because I think we're starting to understand that, we have to operate in different ways. Our lifestyles have to change, not just in the way we travel, the way we eat, it's the clothes we buy and like how they're produced. And we should care about that stuff, because if we don't, this world's not going to be a very fun place to be on, to live on pretty soon. So we got to make changes, and then we got to do it now. And so that's been my primary motivation. And super lucky that my dad owns a couple businesses in town, and I was able to kind of start a section in his store. And, pretty scary, in that entrepreneurial spirit of, it's pretty scary when you put your stuff out there for the first time, but it was kind of well received. And then a store became available last winter right next to his, and we were the first ones to find out about it. And it kind of was like, all right, I gotta jump at this, whether I was ready or not. And so, yeah, that's just kind of been the motivation. And the American West is just a really cool place. I think when you get to the Rockies, there's just so much opportunity. You mentioned you thought when you think of the West, you think of that outdoor lifestyle. And that's kind of what West life to me encapsulates. It's that everybody gets outside and exercises and gets out and enjoys those places, but we need to safeguard and protect them. And I'm just inspired by, the Pacific Ocean, the canyon lands in the middle, and then the Rocky Mountains where my home's always been. So that's kind of what's inspired me. And we'll kind of see where it goes.
Yeah. So my sister is she was an environmental engineer,
Mm.
and now she's kind of working on like our water out here in Florida. So she's all about sustainability and going green and whatnot. So I'll definitely share this interview with her. She's definitely gonna love hearing all that you're about and what Westlife is about. But it's so interesting, you talk about going from a section in your dad's store to own. Is it just one store you have right now?
Yeah, just one. My goal, you know, kind of the business plan or the dream would be to have a store like in a desert community, like a Moab, and then maybe maybe somewhere in California or down on the Baja, kind of on, the ocean somewhere. Cause I think that'd be pretty cool. And then, in a sustainable sense, like I think that would be it. There's a certain point of, I think we need to change our business thinking too, of like this constant growth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay just to be like, all right, 3 stores. And I mean, to me, that would be, one store has been crazy and kind of a dream come true. 3 would be icing on the cake. But it's like we don't need to keep growing all the time. Like we need to be sustainable. So yeah, that's kind of, those are the dreams, and we'll see if it pans out. Just kind of taking it one day at a time right now.
Yeah, but even, I mean, to go from a section to
Yeah.
one store to 3 stores across maybe different states, that would require a lot of hard work. I mean, you've already gone so far in it, but it's interesting. I read an article about you, which, I will definitely link in the description for others to read as well. But in the article, you came up and developed this statement where you said, live first, work later. So it's interesting that someone that's clearly working so hard. Being a business owner is not easy. Being a collegiate athlete was not easy. Someone whose life has been so much about hard work to then develop this saying that says "live first, work later." So what does that mean? Because it seems like the way your life's been has been work, 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 work. So can you just illustrate that a little further for us?
Yeah. I do feel the past couple months I have not been living up to that. Just maybe kind of a necessary evil starting a business and trying to coach. And maybe that's why the past 6 months have been really tough, maybe even the last year. But what I mean by that, live first, work later, I've been really inspired by Von Chenard and Doug Tompkins and the guys that kind of founded the North Face, Patagonia. I've read a lot of books about them, and they made it like a requirement that they'd go out and adventure in the wild, for 2-3 months a year. And they'd leave their businesses just to the people, and they'd be like, hey, we're leaving. It's up to you guys. And I think they saw the benefits of like getting out in the wild or living, so to speak, and whatever that living might be. I think I've also, kind of coming from that, working so hard, and, I think our society's kind of waking up to it, but we're not going to be healthy, or you can't be healthy if you're 9 to 5 every single day and you're not out there challenging yourself and finding new ways to grow. So that, to me, that's kind of what it is. It's like, and I think I have, as much as I have been working, I think I've done a pretty good job of, I get up and I do my yoga every single morning before work. I go for a run. It's last summer I made it a priority. I probably couldn't really afford it in a business sense, but I kind of pulled it off where I hiked from here. I hiked 20 miles, backpack 20 miles along a spine of our mountains. And then I bike packed for another 250 to some mountains up in Wyoming. And then I hiked those for like, a 12-day stretch. So and it's hard to articulate that kind of live first, but it's like, you got to get out there and do stuff. And if you don't do that, you're never going to be maybe that's why I've been successful, so to speak, and being able to start these things is because I've tried to take care of my mental health, and yoga's helped me with that. But exercising and adventuring and kind of trying to live first. And then the work comes second. I think that's really helped me. And I've noticed myself when I work too much, or all of a sudden my whatever quote unquote productivity, my inspiration, that goes down the drain pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of trying to find that balance.
Yeah, balance is a great way to put it. And also, when you talk about that balance, I also hear, taking care of yourself, and you're doing that in a few ways. Hiking is great, getting outside, yoga, impacting people, impacting the youth, the next generation. You're doing a lot of things that directly contribute to a more positive mental health, I imagine. And you already mentioned it, kind of taking care of your mental health. So how convenient is that we are in the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month. You kind of already mentioned some stuff just in your day-to-day habits that are just great self-care tips. But is there anything else, whether you want to expound on, what it means, kind of do some things you've already mentioned, or if there's anything else that you think is really important to mention for others to maybe mimic. What else are you doing for self-care?
Yeah, it's as we're talking, I've kind of just had this like thought. It's, you know, I really struggle kind of like I've mentioned before, like finding my identity after basketball. And I think I kind of got into the party scene. And, for me, kind of just like where I'm at right now, it's making the choices of like choosing to go exercise and stuff instead of maybe go to the bar and like drink in excess. And, that stuff is going to help you so much. And it's helped me. And then I also think it's really important. You have to, I mean, it's like I kind of tell my high school boys this all the time. And it's like, if I don't preach what I say, you have to find stuff that really challenges you and, scares you in a good way, like those good, that fear where your palms are sweating and you kind of feel the tingles in your hands. That's going to motivate you more. I find myself like, if I get bored, that's when maybe I'll turn to like a beer or something like that, but if I'm motivated and I'm doing something that really scares me, like Westlife is, scared the, what out of me, putting my stuff out there. I mean, I remember when I opened the store last June, I was all ready to go. I had the paper up in the window and I spent 30 minutes just cleaning for no reason because I was so scared. But it's that kind of stuff that, finding those things that challenge you and scare you. I think to me, that is like a big answer to staying motivated. And it's easier to choose the healthy lifestyle when you're motivated to go do something. And you got to do a lot of deep work. Like I've spent 5 years doing a lot of deep work with yoga to find what those true passions are. But I think if everybody would maybe turn off their cell phones a little bit more and get away from the TV and, really sit with themselves in silence and meditation and, be quiet and sit with those uncomfortable feelings sometimes, because it's hard to, sit with yourself and find out what you're not good at and what you really want to do. That's, it kind of went on a tangent there, but to me, it's kind of find stuff that you're passionate about, find stuff that scares you to go do. And it'll be easier to get to those healthy habits.
Yeah. And in a way, I think whether you say find stuff that you're passionate about, or whether you say, when I was bored, I end up doing this, it reminds me of a quote that I heard that says, those without a purpose distract themselves with pleasure. So there's not something you're striving for. There's not something you, like you said, having a goal, doing something that makes you uncomfortable. If you don't have a purpose, then like I said, when you're bored, you just boom, go to the easy thing, whether it's, just scrolling, whether it's having a beer, whatever it is. So I think it's interesting to see someone kind of really expound on that quote that I heard. Which it sounds like it's kind of what you're doing. It's not like very synonymous, I'd say, the meanings.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's not easy too. It's like, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of it, but 3 years ago, I was very much I was in the place of like, I wanted all this stuff, but I wasn't there yet. And I had to, you really have to sit with it and, you have to, take it one day at a time. And, yeah, it's not easy, but I think that's kind of the adventure and the fun part,
Is the journey itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, that's definitely interesting to kind of get your perspective on that. But kind of bringing us back to, your connection with Janine, and just everything in regards to your hometown, Steamboat Springs, and just so much of what you're doing is centered around your love for the West. But, so Janine also having her sister being from Steamboat Springs, having her mother being from Steamboat Springs, she actually wrote an article that, we talked about a little bit before this interview, but she wrote an article talking about the lack of access to mental health resources that are available out West, and how she has seen from her perspective that lack of resources affect the community there. And it's another article that we'll make sure is linked in the description for people to kind of take a look at themselves. But when you hear this, when you read this, when you talk about this, what does this mean to you? And is this something that you've kind of seen and noticed yourself?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I mean, I think growing up in this community, a lot of people, we kind of talk about, you have this great community and it's like outdoor access and all this stuff. But like I mentioned before, me personally, just speaking for myself, I mean, there are a lot of very successful people here. And,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's the mountain towns in Colorado, there's more and more kind of money and success coming into them. And I think when again, speaking for myself, like you can kind of get caught up into this comparison of like, well, this person is driving that car and this person's buying this house and, they're eating at that restaurant. And then you're sitting over, me personally, it's like, I can barely afford anything. And, I got a beat up truck and, it can be very easy to get into that comparison of, the success that is, in Steamboat, so to me, like when I think about that, like that's for me personally, that's kind of something that I've always kind of felt. And it's kind of interesting too. Like I don't know as much about I know that there's more, I think in the past, like 5 to 10 years, there's been a push to get more mental health resources here. And it is the thing that people are talking about a little bit more, but I think, winters can be really hard here. If we like this last winter, we just had a big winter and the sun barely came out and it snowed like every day. And yeah, a lot of people, you get out and you're skiing and snowboarding and stuff, but it can kind of wear on you when the sun doesn't come out for a while and, that kind of thing. And I think, I kind of went through it. I feel like I kind of went through a lull this winter. And now that the sun's back out and the birds are chirping and, green grass is showing, I feel like there's new life in me. So, I don't know. It's, I do think there needs to be more openness about, vulnerability and all that kind of stuff. And, there is I don't know what you call it, but it definitely seems like kind of an issue here. But I think people are working on it. And, by us having this conversation, I think we're kind of working on it right now. And, yeah, I don't really know what else to kind of say about it, but.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate your response on that. And it's definitely interesting kind of you being from a place where maybe it's not as open than a place like New York where mental health is like a very big thing. And then you also kind of, I would say, an athlete culture. It's been amazing as of late. A lot of professional and collegiate athletes are being a lot more open about mental health, the pressures that they might deal with. But I feel that's kind of a recent change. I think for a while in athlete culture, you're a tough guy or whatever. So it's interesting, despite all that, you're someone that kind of preaches vulnerability of all things. So kind of with that same mindset and logic, we at Flawless are working on a documentary and an online course for, male identifying high school students. So just in terms of your growth, if you could look back at your younger self in high school, what are some things that you wish you would have wanted to learn about mental health and wellness then? And then, anything, if Coach Michael is speaking to, high school athletes, high school Michael, like what are some tips you would tell yourself?
Yeah. Number one, I think I wish I would have had some form of yoga or mindfulness and breathing, kind of some form of that. I think back to myself, I got so caught up in, like you said, being the tough. I think our society, especially when I came, back in the early 2000s, mid of 2000, our society kind of still in that phase, perpetuating the tough stoic male and kind of hold all in. And, I wish I really struggled communicating. And it's like if I liked a girl, I had a real hard time communicating that and I held so much in. And if I think I envied the boys or the men that were loose and free and danced and did all that stuff. And, I struggled, with that. And I just turned to basketball and kind of, that was my outlet. I wish I would have had some form of yoga kind of to let me know, like find a healthy way to breathe, to organize all those thoughts, those fears. I mean, cause you're coming up through that, you think about a teenager, there's a lot going on, puberty and trying to find your identity, all that kind of stuff. And, I think if there was some way for me to kind of, if I would have had some form of yoga to kind of organize and be like, hey, that's an invalid fear. That doesn't control you. That doesn't, tell you who you are. I think that would have been really helpful for me. And, And then, I think just, yeah, the vulnerability piece, like, it's okay to look goofy, to go try things and fail, all that kind of stuff. And, I had a lot of great mentors, my dad and, my coaches, and, I had a lot of great mentors, but I also wish that, kind of someone maybe told me that, it was okay to cry a little bit more and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think to me, yoga would be a big one. And I think that's kind of where I'm going with my journey, is eventually working with young men, through yoga or some form or fashion, kind of let them know that it's okay. So,
Yeah, definitely. All things we like to talk about too: mindfulness, meditation, just kind of connecting to that higher self or inner self, just kind of things that I feel like in the day to day we brush off, or we're always so focused on other stuff. Just taking that moment, taking that deep breath, I think is super important. So definitely appreciate hearing that. I've taken a lot of your time, Michael. So I just have one last question for you. So we have this concept of a flawless world, right? So it's an ideal type of society. If you could just create a utopia, what would it be? So for me, I always give the example that a flawless world is one where brain health is treated the same way, physical health is, because brain health is physical health. The brain's an organ like anything else. So the same way I can openly be like, hey, I sprained my wrist. I have this great doctor you should check out. I love a world where people can be like, hey, I really struggled with anxiety. You should really check out my therapist. Just in a very open world where there's not so much of a dark cloud around discussing and attacking mental health. So for you in your own worlds, what do you envision a flawless world looking like?
I just had this thought as you were talking, and to me, it's kind of, I don't know how exactly to explain it, but it's almost where men and women, or, whoever you decide to be, are kind of seen as a level playing field, where we all have, yes, that, there's a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect, but we all have the same kind of mental health, where we go through things, and, we all have struggles and we all have triumphs, but it's more just like, hey, just because you're a guy doesn't mean you have to be tough. And just because you're a girl, you don't have, be a princess in a fairy tale kind of thing. And it's like, if that kind of level playing field of like, we really are all the same and we have the same struggles, and kind of leveling that playing field in some way. I'm not sure I'm kind of explaining it right, but kind of just, yeah, we're all equal in a sense, and we all kind of go through stuff, and getting rid of kind of yes, like I have good masculine traits and as a man and that kind of thing, and so do women, and but it's like getting rid of that kind of the man and the women separation, so to speak, in the mental health realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, we always talk about how mental health affects everyone. It doesn't matter race, religion, gender, socioeconomic background, education, like it all affects us. And I think COVID really put that on display when the world kind of stopped for a second. I'm like, oh, we're all a little anxious right now. We're all dealing with isolation right now. We're all kind of dealing and processing this the same way. So I think that's right on par of what kind of you're saying. So yeah, Michael, I appreciate your vulnerability, your honesty, your transparency, your lessons in this conversation. I do want to say to anyone watching this that wants to follow Michael on his mission, make sure you check out westlife.com. We'll make sure we link that in the description. But it's www.west-life.com. But we'll make it easy for you to find, and make sure you follow them on Instagram, west.life. Is there anything else that we could do to support or promote you and your mission, Michael?
I don't think so. I really enjoy being here today, and I support what you guys are doing, and I'm hopeful to kind of keep giving back, and just I think I'm really excited about the future for for me specifically, like young men, and I feel like our society's kind of going in the right direction, but we need a lot of men, to be vulnerable, and for us to kind of keep moving forward, keep moving our society forward. So I'm I'm excited about the future.
Definitely. We're excited to see the growth of Westlife and everything that you're doing. We appreciate the messages and where you're kind of contributing to society today. So thank you again, Michael, and enjoy the rest of your flawless day.
Thank you.